Hey there, listeners, and welcome to Project Zero, where we hear about the journeys of some of the best project leaders in the game. My name is Alex Tuck, and I am the host. And I am here with keynote speaker and upcoming author, Saby. Welcome to the podcast, Saby. Can't wait to hear about your Project Zero. Bet it's going to be a good one.
Excellent, Alex. I'm so excited to be on that Project Zero. When I heard that name Project Zero, I thought maybe it's time to change the name a little bit, Project Zero to Project Hero. How about that?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'll have to talk to Eric and Paige about that switch up. So, Sabi, tell the folks a little bit about the work that you do with all your speaking and the book that you're about to publish.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in a full time role, I'm the Chief Information Officer, Chief Information Security Officer at Clackamas Community College. I have close to 30 years of experience in technology. So, I've done it all, started my journey as a software developer, became a project manager, coming to the good side, the bad, or the dark side, depending upon who you're going to ask. Became a business relationship manager, headed the application development manager, headed the application development team. I became a PMO manager. And then my boss came to me and said, "Sabi, have you ever jumped from a plane?" And that was my Project Zero, which we're going to talk about that. And then about 5 years ago, I joined Clackamas Community College as a chief information officer and a chief information security officer. So depending on the day, Alex, I may be spending 50%, maybe some days 100%, and some days 150%. So that's what I do as a full time. I'm also a adjunct professor. I've been teaching for the last 17 years. And then, of course, I'm part of few organizations, past president of PMI Portland chapter. So I've been mentoring, coaching individuals, project managers, and business analysts for now, I will say about 10 years. And I'm also involved with SIM, Society for Information Management. That's for IT leaders, CIOs, IT directors, IT managers. So currently I'm the president of SIM Portland chapter and I also part of SIM National as marketing chair. So a lot of fun things which I'm doing. And then of course, my book is coming. I'm super excited about that. It's called Scared to Cares. How do you lead complex transformations? And then, of course, I go around the globe and I speak. I'm a keynote speaker. So, talk about leadership, project management, cybersecurity, and AI.
I love your framework. I hope we can fold that into some of the conversation that we have today.
100%.
Awesome. Cool. Let's go back to when you were a younger Sabi and you were just getting started in project management. How did it start? What was your first engagement in project management, first introduction?
Yeah, interestingly, I've been a software developer. And then as I grew in that role, I became a team lead and started leading some of those projects. Never got a title of project management, right? So, team lead kind of thing. And the interesting journey happened when I immigrated to United States. Back in India, I was working as an assistant manager software development. I loved that role. Coming here in the United States, I always wanted to become that application development manager. I don't know why, but I was like, that's my dream job. That's what I want. And I went out and applied for all these positions. I maybe applied for 50 positions, always got rejected. And then I was like, this is not helping. So I came back and started as a software developer, started my journey again as a software developer.
Mhm.
And I always wanted to remember that application development manager. So working at City of Portland, and I said, okay, who are these emerging leaders? Who are these superstars where everybody's talking about them? So I identified three folks at City of Portland. And I said, what is one common thing among those three? If I have to be like them, what is one common thing I can pick from all those three? So interestingly, all three in their signature line had something called PMP. And I
Oh,
had no clue what PMP was. I was like, that's very interesting. So I started digging more into that. And it was like, okay, project management professional certification. So that's where I said, okay, if I want to be a leader like them, I need to start my journey. I need to get my PMP certification. So I cleared my PMP on August 25th, 2008. I still remember that date because it was quite the exam, as many PMPs know. And I didn't want to go through that exam again. So I cleared my PMP and then a position opened up at City of Portland and I became that project manager. So that's where my official journey into project management started.
that's awesome. You probably feel this way, I think, because almost every single engineer that I talk to, software developer, engineer, turn project manager, there's so much value in having that technical background and then moving into project management. You can lead the team. You can call your engineers out when they're pushing the limits a little bit, trying to test you, right? Has that been your experience throughout your experience, throughout your
Absolutely. The software actually helps you to b- prepare you to become a project manager. So there, in software line, there is SDLC, software development lifecycle. That's very similar to project lifecycle. If you start connecting those two things, and of course they are introverts, the IT folks, they want to push the limits. They want to do things. They don't want to be put in boxes or into processes. So that's always challenging when you want to slow them a little bit and say, have we thought through this really? Is it the real problem which we're solving? Or is it like you're fancier or sometimes we want to add those fancy functionalities into a release? So that's where that tussle comes in.
That's so awesome. And what did you study in your undergraduate? Was it software engineering?
Yeah, computer science and engineering.
Yeah.
That was my
Yeah.
bachelor's. Yeah. But I did my master's in engineering and technology management. And that's where I learned a little bit more about project management.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah. I'm always envious of folks that come from the engineering side and development side because I joke that I'd never gotten paid to write a single line of code, but wow, I've debugged so much code in my life. Uh,
Yes.
it's just the nature. I find that the best project manager, at least on our team and in other teams, they're techno functional, right? So some people are more technical, some people are more functional, but based on all your speaking experience and your career trajectory, you're obviously great at speaking with people and explaining probably very complex things in simple ways. That's always a skill that you want to build
Yeah.
out.
That
So,
helps a lot.
okay, so it's time. Let's talk about Project Zero. Tell us
Yes.
about that for the listeners at home. What's that first project where you like really figured out how to be a project manager?
I've done many projects, but I will share a project which really stressed. It was like, okay, this is the project which I want to talk about, right? It was 2018, February 2018. And I was managing a PMO at City of Portland, team of 8 PMs, 2 BAs running a lot of projects at the city. And my boss came to me during one-on-one check-ins. He was the chief technology officer at City of Portland and said, Sabi, have you ever jumped from a plane? And I was like, no. Well, are you interested? I was like, no. Well, guess what? I would love to assign you to this project. And I was like, okay, let me think. And that project was implementing City of Portland's permit system. Now, City started that project in 2008 until 2018, 10 years, had failed multiple times, multiple starts, multiple stops. Previous 4 project managers were either fired or put in different roles. Even one of the bureau director was fired. So it was the hot potato. It was the number one critical project at City of Portland, and nobody wanted to own that. And that was the project which my boss said, I would love to assign that to you. So what happened was I was very cautious, or I immediately went into that fear zone, right? So we have these zones which I talk about. The comfort zone. You wake up and you're in your flow, you get it done because you know how things work. Then comes the fear of unknown. And this is the zone when you don't have that confidence, you start looking for excuses. So when my boss came to me and said, Sabi, I want to assign this project to you, I went into that fear zone. And then your colleagues don't help. And one of the colleagues came to me and said, Sabi, do you have good relationship with your boss? Why is he getting you fired? I was like, what are you talking about? All these things start coming into your picture. And I started looking for excuses. And I went and talked to my mentor. I was like, what excuse should I give my boss to get out of this project? And he was like, no, if anybody can do this project, Sabi, you can do this. I was like, no, 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 no. Don't push me in. Get me out. And he was like, no, Sabi, if anybody can do this project, you can do this. I was like, that's not helping. So I come back and talk to my wife, looking for another excuse. And I talked to my daughter. I said, sweetheart, we have kids. They have games in the evening. It's going to be long hours. I'm going to probably say no to this project. And she was like, no, I see you doing this project. If anybody can do this project, you can do this. I'm like screaming from inside, Alex.
Yeah.
Somebody give me a reason to get out. And then next Monday morning, I go back into my office, still wasn't sure what reason I'm going to give my boss to get out of the project. I received my email from my daughter, which said, Daddy, if a project has failed multiple times, it's a political mess. Here are the 4 things you can do. And she is 10 years old. You have a 10-year-old daughter. I immediately stood up from my seat. I directly went into my boss' office. I said, his name is Jeff. I said, Jeff, I'm accepting this project. I'm doing it for my daughter. And there is no power in this world which will stop me in making this project successful.
Love it. Love it. Your kids can make you do magical stuff, huh? I'm scared of my daughter telling me that because I think she'll convince me to do anything.
Absolutely. You're right. You are the role models for your kids. You have to lead. You have to lead your kids. So that was the aha moment for me when I received that email from my daughter and said, I'm gonna jump into this. I'm jumping from the plane.
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned a mentor. Was the mentor in the organization or outside of the organization?
Outside
And okay,
outside
cool.
the organization, he had known about this project for a long time.
Okay.
And yeah,
That's awesome. I always find that having mentors in big projects like this, it's huge. But at the same time, there's nothing that that mentor can help you when it comes to navigating like all the intricacies of the challenges within the organization. Did you have anyone that was able to help you navigate some of those pieces within the city of Portland? Like, okay, this person is going to resist this way, or this is what failed that way. Did you have any of that there?
I had been there for last 10, 12 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And then people usually ask, like, when you jumped from the plane, who was your parachute? And my parachute was my previous boss
Okay.
because he was one guy who I could go to and talk openly and honestly about things. And he had been there for 20 plus years. He knew all the intricacies of the complexity within the organizations. Yes. So you definitely need that people, those individuals, those team members who can guide you and say, those are the minds over there, Sabi. Don't jump out there.
Right.
Need those people.
All right. So tell us, did it get delivered eventually?
Yes.
Okay. Let's
February
hear it.
10th, 2020, we
Okay.
went live. February 10th, 2020. So my upcoming book is actually based on this real journey. Because when we see these complex transformations, Alex, we're in that scare mode. These complex transformations, complex projects, which you're familiar with, there's a lot of scare is an acronym, a lot of stress, because a lot of pressure to meet the timelines, meet the budget, a lot of chaos. Because sometimes even the project is not fully defined, the scope is not clearly defined, and suddenly you're asked to deliver on something. A stands for anxiety. And sometimes what happens is leaders, when they're under a lot of stress, a lot of chaos, they start micromanaging and they start making decisions behind closed doors and not communicating. And then R stands for resistance, resistance to change. Like, I've been doing it for 20 years. Why do I need to change these transformations? Even small transformations are tough. There were incidents in this project when folks would go and meet the sponsor of the project, will actually cry in their office and say why we have to go through this. Like a couple of the folks, they were like, yeah, don't go live with the next year because I need to retire. So you hear those kind of things, resistance to change. And then E stands for ego. And leaders, and many leaders have this ego. And then they stop listening to their team members.
Mhm.
There is no constructive feedback which is coming, and they shut them down because this is my way or highway. So that's the scare mode. And how, as leaders, we need to shift from scare to cares. And cares is an acronym, of course. C stands for communicate. Organizational change management is a huge part for any change. Almost 80% of these transformations fail. Number one reason, 92% of these transformations fail because of people issues. 52% of these transformations fail because of communication. So people and communication, right? That's a huge part for any complex transformation. So communicate. A stands for adapt. Are you going to adapt? A lot of things are going to come on your way while you're managing these projects. There may be a COVID, there may be AI, there may be something else. How are you going to adapt to those things which are going to come at you? R stands for relationships. Are you effective in building relationships with your sponsor, with your stakeholders, with your team members? How effective you are. E stands for empower. Do you empower your team? Do you trust? Have you built the trust within the team? Empower your team to deliver on those results or that project successfully. And then us at the bottom, as part of cares, as leaders, you need to stay calm. Because if you go into the scare mode and if you go in the chaos mode, team is going to start spinning and that project is going to go haywire. So scare to cares is the framework to deliver complex transformations.
Sabi, I think you're onto something there. I can't wait for your book to come out.
Thanks, man.
So what was one of those scary moments, right? What was a big learning that you had during that project? Something that sort of fell apart that you were able to resolve?
There were many of those incidents, many. So let's start with, I will give you a few.
Mm.
This project was the number one critical project at City of Portland. It was the limelight for the local newspaper. So they had stories written about this project.
Mhm.
Right? So we had other successful projects, but they don't want to talk about that. So me and the boss, we actually went to meet the editor and said, here's another successful project which was delivered successfully. Why don't you write about this? Why do you have to focus on this failure which had been going for such a long time? And that editor threw the report in the garbage and said, that's not what we're talking about.
Ugh.
I want to talk about the failures. And he was like, okay, what's going on with this particular project? I want to write about this. And I was like, we are changing lives with this project. We are saving blood. And the editor was like, okay, what's going on? Well, intrigue. Tell me more about that. So I was like, one of the core functionality of this project was, because of the permit system, for folks to upload their plans online. So previously what was happening was everybody who needed any kind of permit, they had to print like 4 set of rolls. They have to bring it to the office. And then there were folks who were working on those plans, like huge plans and marking and doing all that. And I went to visit one of those centers, like the front center, and I saw like a first aid box. I was like, why do you have first aid box here? And the person was like, Sabi, do you know how painful it is? All those paper cuts? Do you see our blood on those paper plans? I was like, that is so cool. Yes, we're saving blood. We're changing lives one step at a time with this product. So we're going to upload, we'll give you the ability to upload your plans online and nobody has to come in and deal with those paper cuts.
Love
So
it.
those are the kind of stories which came along as the journey of this project.
That's so awesome. And you all finished right before COVID. Well, sort of in the middle of COVID, but
I
beginning
think
of COVID.
right before COVID,
Yeah,
right
right
before
before the
COVID.
official COVID.
Official COVID, right? Mid-March was when everybody was asked to go home.
Uh-huh.
And February 10th, 2020, we had actually went live. I was like, wow, what a timing. I couldn't have feel more blessed about that transition.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a system that, wow, if you didn't have it there before COVID, you wouldn't have things being built.
No, slow down everything. Talk about that, right? Ability to pay online, ability to
Yep,
do all those inspections online. Those all functionalities came just before that. So that's why I was like, the timing was perfect. They couldn't have done better than that.
that's so cool. Mostly software project, right? Probably some process workflows too. Did you all have an internal development team or were you working with a vendor?
It was all mix, right? We had
Oh,
a
okay.
vendor, we had an integrator, we had internal team doing a majority of the work. About 50 folks internally working on this project. And oh boy, yeah, interesting pieces, interesting journey through that transition.
Wow, I can't even imagine. So, Sabi, I live in a town of 6,500 people, and so I can't even imagine the infrastructure. I hear you say 50 people internal, and I'm like, oh my god, that is gigantic. Congratulations. I'm glad that that went well. That sounds, and
Yes.
I'm excited to read about the whole thing in your book.
There are so many interesting stories. Here's another one which I will share with you, Alex. So when I took over this project and I went to meet one of my subject matter expert or team lead,
Mhm.
and I went into her office, and in your office usually you have that whiteboard in the back. So she had a whiteboard. She had written some numbers over there, like 287, 286, 285, so on, like bunch of numbers. And then she had crossed off some of those numbers. And I went to her and I was like, "What are those numbers? What do those signify?" And she was like, "Sabi, those are the days left before I retire." I was like, "There's no way. There's no way you can retire. What do you need? I can bring a box of chocolates for you every week." But because in your projects, you need those superstars who can get your project done. And as a leader, it's our role to identify those superstars and make sure they stick to your project so that you can deliver those projects successfully.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This reminds me so much, Sabi. I worked on a project with the state of Vermont. Similar vibe, right? Like we had people with the whiteboards or the pieces of paper that they were ripping the day off every single day. 30 days
Yeah.
till I retire, right?
Yeah.
And they're the superstars. Same idea though. There was a project that was going on for 10 years. And I worked for an outside consulting firm
Yeah.
and got hired in, and we're like, all right, we're going to try this one more time. And otherwise we're just burying this thing. And
Yeah.
man, we leaned in really hard and for 18 months, got it back on track and got it done. And it was just like, it was the most unsuccessful $1 million+ project for the state of Vermont that was still on the backlog. And it was, but those kinds of stories, how many challenges did you face? How many people got mad with you? But how happy were people when you were done?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There multiple people coming to office multiple times and just complaining, just not happy about the change. Because here's one of the things, because it wasn't just a software project, it was business transformational project,
Sure.
right? When this project was implemented in 1998, 99, and there were bugs in the system which never got fixed. So that's the technical debt I'm talking about. So there were bugs in the system which were never fixed. And what business did was they actually built their business processes around those bugs. And now we are coming in there and we're fixing those bugs.
Mhm.
And that's breaking their business processes.
Yep.
So we were working very closely with a team of business analysts to figure out how impactful, how and what impact it's going to have on those business processes and how we can work with them to make sure that impact is minimum and work through those new business processes. That takes a lot of time, a lot of resources to help so that they can continue to do their job.
Yep. Yep. Love it. Love it. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. And you can still talk about some of your Project Zero stuff, but I want to hear some advice for those project managers. Like a lot of people that listen to the show, they're early or in the middle of their career and they hear these stories. They had the same story. They had this breakthrough, Savi, just like you had, but they don't know where to go next, right? And so now you're CIO, it built on that project management experience. And so just hearing that journey is really helpful for people to understand like, hey, I don't have to be a project manager forever, but if I want to, I can be like this person that went from project manager to senior project manager to program manager to portfolio manager, right? You can do that, or you can transition and do something a little different. So anyway, I'd love to hear your advice for these folks on what do you think the number one skill is that a project manager needs to have?
I call project managers as project leaders. So, number one skill as a project leader or any leader you should have is ability to influence. Can you influence? And how do you sharpen that skill? And where do you go and get that skill sharpened, right? I was a project manager, then became a business relationship manager, and I always wanted to become that application development manager. And always was rejected. You don't have experience managing teams. It was like chicken and egg thing. You don't give me that experience. Where do I go and get that experience? So
Yep.
many times the PMs and those leaders are in that mode. Yes, I can manage projects, but I don't get opportunities to become a supervisor or manager because I'm not managing those teams. So they get rejected every single time.
Mhm.
And they're like, okay, how do I break through this? One of the strategies which I use and I talk about that is a position opened up for that application development manager, dream job. I applied for it, went for an interview, and they asked me that question. They said, Sabi, we don't see that experience of managing teams, of supervising on your resume. I said, okay, there are three kinds or three levels of leadership. That was my answer. There's three levels of leadership in terms of complexity. Number three comes in when you're a functional manager, like this job. You have the power, you have the authority. It's tough, but you still have the power and authority to get the work done. Number two, in terms of complexity, comes when you're a project leader. When you don't have any power, you don't have any authority, but you still need to get the work done. You still need to deliver. You need a different skill set. You need the ability to motivate your team, ability to build those relationships. But the number one complexity in terms of leadership is when you're a volunteer leader, when the folks are not getting paid, they want to come for you because you are the leader. That's where you build your skills to influence. And where do you go and get that skill? Join the local PMI chapter. Be on the board. Be the president. Lead the organization. And see if people are following you. If you have really built that influence, that gives you the safe environment to sharpen your skills to become that leader. So that's the mantra. And I've used it very successfully to break through that and become that next level of leader.
I love that, Sabi. The ability to influence. I think you're interview number 19 for me now, and no one has mentioned influence at all. Almost everyone says some sort of communication and they get deeper, but this is more than communication. This is actually convincing people to follow, even when you don't have power. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love how you broke down the three different types of leadership too. You painted it perfectly. That's great. Thank you for that. So everybody's talking about it. It's hard to go 30 minutes in anything these days without hearing it. Where's AI taking us with project management over the next few years?
Yeah. Yeah. AI is becoming more and more part of your toolkit.
Mhm.
So start using it as a toolkit rather than start thinking about it as replacing you. One of the things which I'm seeing is there's a gap. And the gap is if you're a fresh project manager, like this is your first project, and you start using AI, you're gonna struggle because AI is hallucinating. It's gonna make things up, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, this is so true." It's not because you don't have that experience behind you to able to understand what's good and what's bad, right? So you need that 3 to 5 years of experience in project management so you can understand that whatever AI is using or saying is the true thing. So that's very important. Start learning AI. How do you work with AI? That's a key thing. Like, how do you build your prompt? How do you automate some of those things which are taking a lot of your time? I wish AI could have been part of my journey where we had one of the roles of a PM was just to take notes through all these meetings and compile all those and put action items and start tracking those. AI can do all of that right now. So it's fast tracking that. But at the same time, when you fast track so many things, we have only that much ability to manage this change. It's fast tracking that change. So our role as a leader sometimes is to start taking care of the team so that they are able to manage this change, able to go through at such a fast pace. Sometimes it's taking a pause and slowing down and asking that question. Right now, everybody's 100 miles an hour on AI and want to do the right things. So yes, we need to go there. I'm not stopping you. But think about the human impact, environmental impact, ethical impact AI is going to have on all these things, or is already having the impact on that. So you need to educate yourself about that. And don't be afraid of AI. Start playing around with it. Start using it in your day to day work, but don't give your critical thinking power to AI. Don't start with AI. Start with your own brain, put some ideas in there, and then use AI to make it better. Because
I
if you're going
love
to start giving your thinking power to AI, your brain, you're going to start becoming weak, and you will be so dependent. You will be so addicted to AI. So stop being so dependent on AI.
I rarely give my wife credit when we start to talk about like technology adoption, right? Because she's very anti technology. But with our kids, they use Google a lot. They'll ask me if we can use my chat GPT and talk to it and ask it questions about things. And my wife said something really awesome. She's like, hey, why don't you all just think for a second? Do you know the answer to this? Or do you have a guess at what the answer is going to be? And do that first. And then one, you'll write better prompts. I was like, oh, wow, you could actually write a better prompt because of this. Cause then you can try to be more nuanced with your question. Right. And so I think just taking that step of thinking first, to your point, Sabi, and then saying, hey, do I really know this?
Yeah.
Should I be the one making this decision or should I really outsource this to ChatGPT that's just going to make something up and say it very confidently?
I've
Yeah.
been at fault of that many times when
Mm.
I don't want to put pressure on my brain and just give that power to, and then later on I realize, oh my God, what was I thinking? And then I realize I wasn't even thinking.
All the time.
Yeah.
Even when I pull together a presentation or something, sometimes I'll just be like, I'm stuck. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I'll ask ChatGPT, hey, I really want to talk about this type of thing. I don't really know how to formulate it.
Yeah.
And so I'll give it a little bit of guidance and then it'll break me out of that thinking block. But sometimes you can just get lazy and
Yeah.
just ask for the whole thing. And it may sound impressive to everyone when you're doing it, but it's not, you're selling yourself short.
Yes.
So,
100%.
all right. So, Sabi, how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
Saby Waraich, SABY WARAICH. You can also connect with me on my website, sabywaraich.com. I'm also on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos regularly. Love to see you as part of that community. I'm also on X and Insta, but LinkedIn is my main channel.
Yeah. This is a great session. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. It was great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And thanks to everyone here who joined us on Project Zero this week. Be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts. And we will catch you next time with another great project leader story.